Building muscle for MMA specifically is one of the hardest things that you can do, mainly because this natural sport of MMA is very anaerobic and catabolic. Anaerobic is basically cardio based more, and catabolic means that you're going to lose muscle while you do this activity. And if you're training as long as you should be to get good, right, minimum like 2 to 3 hours a day, and you're probably training multiple times in the day, you're probably going to be in a catabolic state because of that. So it's very important that we don't want to be in that state for too long because that will make you lose muscle. So we want to be in something called anabolic. Anabolic is basically where you're in a muscle building state, something like weightlifting, for example. Right? If you train for like about an hour, you will be in an anabolic state. Right? There's other activities like sprinting, for example, can put you in an anabolic state as well. And there's other physical exercises. Right? So we want to be in these natural anabolic states. And, MMA unfortunately kind of puts us out of it. So you're going to be asking, how do you balance that out? Well, that's what this video is for. And, I'm going to make this point very clear unfortunately, because, if you're going to be doing grappling, you're probably going to meet a bunch of these key jiu-jitsu subhumans who will shame you for being strong and for using strength. And they'll tell you that strength is a bad thing. But unironically enough, the Gracies have always lost to these catch wrestlers who were stronger than them, and other grapplers as well, who were literally stronger than them. Right? Catch wrestling is literally superior for this reason, right? Is because it combines grappling technique with grappling strength. Right? So never let these subhumans that do jiu-jitsu and these subhuman leaps shame you for being strong. And even though I have my heavy criticism of the Gracies, I will admit this at least, right? About Hicks and Gracie, right? Who is supposedly, ironically enough, the best of the Gracies. He's considered the best, right? Right? Is it funny enough? He's also the strongest and most jack-looking dude of all of the Gracies, right? So even the Gracies themselves, the best amongst them, is the guy who's the strongest too. So strength and building muscle is actually very important, right? Who would have thought, right? So I want you to get this idea out of your head that building muscle is going to make you slow, right? Unfortunately, a lot of even in boxing, they have this view that if you build up too much muscle, this would only be true if you're like maybe on steroids and you might build up too much muscle, right? But you can't accidentally build too much muscle, right? You don't just accidentally build too much muscle, right? It's a very thorough process. It takes a lot of time, and I'm about to give you all this advice. The best thing for building muscle is dedication and consistency, right? I can give you all this amazing advice, which is what I will do. But if you don't actually stay to it, stay consistent with that and follow exactly what I'm saying, then you probably won't build as much as you could, right? So again, obviously everyone's schedule is going to be slightly different for their training schedules and whatnot and their training sessions. But this is what I'm going to tell you. I want you to drink, right, first thing in the morning. Drink way as soon as you wake up. Right, you can drink a little water. That's what I personally do in the morning because I don't want to be feeling too heavy with the milk, even though I drink with the raw milk, right? And the water you're specifically going to be drinking with reverse osmosis water. Obviously, there's a whole thing about how tap water is bad, right? Get reverse osmosis water. And again, you could test it out, right? So it can be 8 ounces or 1 cup, all right, with 1 scoop of whey protein. Or you could do 2 scoops of whey protein and, 2 cups or 16 ounces, right? And this is like an hour before your training, right? An hour before it. And this is like really good even if you train early in the morning, then maybe don't take 2 scoops of whey protein. Maybe take one because it might, you might feel like you need to go to the bathroom, honestly. So, so keep that in mind, right? And why do we do this? Okay, why do you want to drink whey protein first thing in the morning? Right? Mainly because it puts you in this protein synthesis state, right? You want to be and it puts you in an anabolic state from the start of the day, right? Amazing, right? Now, another thing that, again, I don't want to go specifics into just breakfast because a lot of you have heard of super basic advice, right? Super basic advice is eat in a caloric surplus. Yeah, this is like somewhat true, right? This is not entirely wrong advice. But if you're eating like a caloric surplus of hot Cheetos, you're not going to build the most optimal gains, right? So we want to be eating good natural whole foods, right? Good natural whole foods if we can, right? So that's like the best I can tell you right now, right? And the whey protein that you guys should be getting is one that's high quality, doesn't have any, fillers, emulsifiers, synthetic ingredients. Get one that's you can get one that's just that. I can have I have this all in my biohacking program in a lot more detail where you can actually get the stuff that same stuff that I use, right? And none of the stuff that's in there is actually sponsored by anyone. So it's the real deal, right? And another thing is this is like if you're training in the morning. If you don't train in the morning, still do this. Right? Still do the take the whey protein in the morning, first thing in the morning, right? And another thing is that uh, so after training. So what should you do after training? So after training, within a 45-minute window, you want to eat food right away, right? Maximum you want to wait is like 2 hours, right? I mean, you can still build muscle after the 2 hours, but it won't be as optimal, right? So within 45 minutes, ideally, right, eat right after training, right? And this is another thing. A lot of you might wait for too long. No, right after training. I just say just right after training, right? You can even bring, you know, whey protein shake with you to the gym so that like right after you just drink it, right? And this is like a side point, but the blender bottle that you get, make sure it's made out of steel or glass. I've only seen steel, right? But steel is probably your best option, right? Make sure it's made of steel. You don't want to ingest microplastics with your whey protein, right? Which is actually estrogenic, funny enough. So you want to be in this protein synthesis state constantly, right? And you're going to be in this anabolic state constantly, right? Right. You could also, this is again optional that I will give you guys, right? Is that you can drink another protein shake in the day later, and it could be like a beef isolate or a bone broth, right? Which is optional because this is actually really good for your gut health and your joint health, right? Especially if you have achy joints or your gut isn't the best. Bone broth, right? This will still be actually pretty good, and it'll help you build a muscle. Not as much as whey protein would technically, but still pretty good. I would still recommend it. And the most important thing, like I said, these two words, catabolic and anabolic. You always want to be in an anabolic state, a muscle building state, and you want to avoid being in a catabolic state, which is a muscle losing state, right? And right before you sleep, actually, funny enough, right before you sleep, you want to be, yeah, I mean, right before you sleep. This is another form of protein. It's called casein protein. So 30 minutes to an hour before you sleep, drink casein protein with raw milk. Okay. And I also forgot to mention this. So the whey protein that you take after training, make sure it's with raw milk. Okay, as well. So right, you can. I personally add 2 scoops. You can experiment 1 scoop, 2 scoop. Right. And for the casein protein, I think 1 scoop. Yeah, 1 scoop. Sometimes I'll do two. Right. Depends. Right. Yes. So yeah. So at night, 30 minutes before you sleep, drink casein protein. Right. And again, about 1 cup to 18 ounces. If it's 1 scoop, if it's 2 scoops, 2 cups, right? And again, make sure you try your best to take it before like 8 o'clock, right? Because again, sleep is also very important. I went into this a lot more in detail about sleep axing for MMA, But the reason I recommended drinking casein protein with raw milk is because, funny enough, this like raw milk will actually help you sleep a lot better. Right? And casein protein will also help you sleep a lot better because this is the difference between whey protein and casein protein. Whey protein is fast digesting. Right? So it's going to be in your system, give or take about 30 to 45 minutes. Right? Casein protein is the opposite, slow digesting. It's going to stay in your system for a longer amount of time and keep you in that anabolic state. So this is why it's really good to take this while you're sleeping. Right? Because again, you're only sleeping and you'll be building muscle as you sleep. Right? And this is actually something I have not seen a lot of people talk about casein protein. Right? And it's super underrated. And this is what I would recommend. Another thing I would recommend adding into your routine, if you are able to, is sunlight. Sunlight. Going outside, walking. Right? Start off with 10 minutes a day and then get to 15, 20, 30 minutes. Right? The more you stay in the sun, the better it is. Right? And yeah, again, I've gone into more detail about diet maxing. I'm just mentioning some brief stuff for you. I have another video, diet maxing for MMA. Recommend you check that one out. Right? But eating in a caloric surplus. So again, super basic advice that everyone gives you, but it's very important that the foods you're eating are bioavailable and um, natural and organic whole foods, basically. Right? You don't want to be eating like stuff with red 40 and like hot Cheetos, like you know, just don't. Just don't. I've already gone into why you shouldn't in the diet maxing video, right? Right. And I've gone into like detail as how to give up junk food and all that. So if you're still struggling with that, I recommend watching that video that I have, how I quit junk food forever. Right. So, and someone's gonna be asking, but couldn't I just take vitamin D pills? Wouldn't that just be the same? And it's not. I'll tell you exactly why. Because first of all, when you take vitamin D pills, they don't absorb into your body as much as you think they do. It may say 10,000 IU, right, or 5,000 IU, but you only absorb, I believe, 20% of that. So that's only like, so if it's like 10,000 IU, you're probably only absorbing 2,000 at best. And even that form, there's been studies actually that show that, again, like when you take vitamin D pills, it doesn't really absorb into your body as much as it could. And even when it does absorb, it's actually kind of detrimental. So, I would just avoid that, to be honest. Just vitamin D from the sun, that's free. You know what I mean? Now, if you live in an area where it's like you don't get too much sunlight, especially during the winter time, there's something you can get. You can get red light and red light bulbs, right? Make sure they are incandescent. I'm going to be going into more detail in another video. Probably a light maxing video because I've been exploring into this. And it's a very interesting topic. I feel like a lot of people don't know anything about it. And, you know, red light is pretty good. I would recommend that. If you can get a UVB lamp, that's also very good, right? Especially for days that, maybe you weren't able to go out in the sun, right? You were busy, right? Or it's just winter time and sun isn't really out. It's just too cold anyways, right? So that's what I would recommend. Right? Get a UVB lamp right? Otherwise, if you live in a climate that's pretty warm, get vitamin D. Right? Get vitamin D from the sun straight up. It's free, right? It's free, right? Don't waste your money on pills. Right? That's all. That's what I'm gonna tell you. Straight up. Don't even waste it. Right? Right? Just in general, pills are a scam. Right? Just in general, because it says this amount, but again, even if it's a very organic brand, your body doesn't absorb too much. Now, what you can get is like powder. Right? Right? Powder is actually bioavailable. Right? It does absorb into your body more naturally and better. Right? So get that. Now, other things you do want to consider when it comes to, again, muscle building are vitamins, right? Here's vitamin A. So, again, the numbers I'm going to be giving you, take them with a grain of salt and everything, because, again, this is supposed to be optimal for athletes. Again, you know, experiment is what I would recommend for you, right? So you need about like 900 like micrograms of vitamin A daily, supposedly. Again, take it with a grain of salt, right? So one way you can do this is by taking 1 or 2 teaspoons of beef liver, right? Beef liver powder. If you have actual beef liver, that's good. That's good too, right? Or you can also take 1 medium sweet potato, right? Again, you don't have to necessarily do this every day. I personally take beef liver or lamb liver like once a week. That's what you can do. I'm just giving you the most optimal form, right? Other thing you can do, vitamin C. Vitamin C, again, 200 to 500 micrograms per day, right? So this would be about half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of cacao plum, which is the highest amount of vitamin C that you can get from a plant or from a fruit specifically, right? Cacao plum, or you can get the powdered form of it, or you could get the actual fruit, right? But the powdered form would probably be just easier, but it's up to you if you can even find the fruit. Um, Vitamin D, like I stated earlier, you know, um, optimal amount 10,000 to 20,000 IU, or that's the optimal amount, which is just 15 minutes to 30 minutes of sunlight. Now, again, I know you're like, oh, technically we're supposed to be spending so much time in the sun, but yeah, get some sunlight. It's really good for you, right? Especially on the days that you aren't training. This is your best way to recover, right? But for the days that you can't, like I said, I mentioned a bunch of things, like red light bulbs, like incandescent, make sure it's not LED, incandescent. And you want to make sure it's another thing that you can do in terms of diet for vitamin D. You can take about 1 to 2 tablespoons of cod liver oil. Right, this is for the days that I don't really go out in the sun. This is what I will take. Make sure it's a good quality brand. Again, make sure it's wild caught, organic, everything. Right. Again, I have this in my biohacking program for MMA. If you do want to check it out, all the stuff is all listed below. You can get all the highest quality stuff on there, right? And I have like links and everything, so that you can just go and straight up, right? I also have more detailed stuff in there as well, right? Now, when it comes to vitamin E, you want about 20 to 30 micrograms, right? Is optimal, right? Milligrams, whatever you want to call it, right? 1 tablespoon of wheat germ oil is good enough, right? Right. Again, there's a lot of research about the importance of vitamin D and everything, right? And you guys can do that on your own time about the importance of vitamin E and how it's relevant to muscle building. Now, vitamin K. If you're getting vitamin D, you need to be getting vitamin K as well, right? So you can take about 4 to 8 ounces of raw sheep milk, cheese, right? This is one way you can take it. Or you can take 100 grams, which is about 3.5 ounces of goose liver. Again, either way, right? There's other foods that have vitamin K. I'm just giving you the more optimal like amount of food. Now you may be asking, where am I going to get this? Good question. So raw sheep milk, cheese, you can actually get from Costco, right? Yeah, you can get from Costco. And goose liver, again, I have this um in my program as well. I've listed where you can get a good quality goose liver as well. Now, when it comes to minerals, we're moving on to minerals. So calcium, right? So again, the optimal amount is about 1,200 to 1,500, which would be about, you know, we go based off of 5 cups or 1.5 liters of raw milk, right? Or it would be about, you know, about, almost 5 ounces of raw Parmesan cheese. Again, this might seem a lot, but it's like, you can also get calcium from uh, eggshells, actually, funny enough. Right? What I would recommend you can do is you take some eggshells, you boil them, right? So it kills anything that's on there. And, make sure this is from a quality place. Because again, unfortunately, they sometimes spray chlorine on eggs actually. So you have to be really careful, right? So obviously don't get store-bought stuff. If you can get it from a farmer, that would be the best for your eggs. Yeah, and like once you boil for about 15 minutes, like you can actually grind it up into your protein shake. That's what I actually did. Right. Well, let's see. Phosphorus. So I'm not going to be going over every mineral, to be honest, because I think that would just be a little too much, right? But phosphorus about 10 ounces, or that's about two regular cans of sardines. Or you can get about a pound to 1.2 pounds of wild caught salmon. Right, would be good. But I don't think most people have phosphorus issue. You can get it from also just drinking coconut water while you're training as well. Like so, in between your training, you can bring coconut water with you, or you can get a good quality electrolyte. Right, make sure it's not Pedialyte or whatever that stuff. No, right. For magnesium, right, magnesium about 26 ounces. Right, so that's about 1.5 to 1.6 pounds of salmon, or it could be 1.8 pounds of mackerel, right, which is a type of fish as well. Right, this is again a lot of people are magnesium deficient, so the optimal amount. You could also get magnesium powder, which is just as good, right? And just make sure again quality. Make sure it's a good quality one. It's 600 to 700 um what is it micrograms or milligrams per day. That's the optimal amount, right? I'll probably be focusing more on magnesium because honestly, more people are more deficient in magnesium. So that's what you should probably be focusing on. Again, there's so many like minerals, right? Especially like the ones that we're talking about, macro minerals, right? Right. Yeah. Magnesium is probably the more important one because a lot of people, unfortunately, are very deficient in it, right? When it comes to trace minerals, right? Right. I won't go really into iron because most men already have enough iron. Men naturally have a higher amount of iron in our blood. Right? For a woman watching this, I guess, then start eating more apples. Right? Start eating more foods with iron and right, like stuff like beef and whatnot. But more people are actually deficient in zinc. Right? So you need about 15 to 30 grams or milligrams of zinc per day to be optimal. So how much would that be? That would be about actually 2 to 4 oysters per day, or a pound of beef every day. I know it seems a lot. The 1 pound of beef actually is pretty doable, but this is one hack that I would do personally, and it's maybe something you can take. It's like every once a week, I would cook up oysters, and I would cook about like 5 to 7 oysters. Right, so you don't have to necessarily take it every day, right? I think I told you guys last time for the diet maxing video that I'm pretty consistent with what I eat. I eat the same thing every day, right? And that consistency is the most important because that's what actually helps you build up muscle. So when it comes to you know zinc specifically, what I would do on the weekends, right? So 5 days a week, I'm eating the same stuff every day, right? On the weekends, I would change it up and add oysters, right? So about 5 to 7 oysters, right? And I would just eat it up, and that would be enough zinc for the whole week. Right, that's what you guys can also do. For oysters, try and make sure it's a wild caught. Right, make sure it's good quality. Right, you can also do it from mussels as well if you can't find oysters. But oysters are the more optimal for zinc. Right now, believe it or not, now that we've talked about all these minerals in diets, what is the muscle building like routine? So I can give you It's hard for me to say this is going to be the most optimal routine and whatnot. I do have it in my biohacking program. For if you do want to, if you want a more optimal routine, I recommend joining. But I'll tell you a secret that actually, funny enough, you may not believe it. Believe it or not, there's a new recent study that they found. They found that spot reduction is real. So all these gym bros who basically lied to you and said spot reduction isn't real were wrong. And there's literally a new study that shows. Now, of course, if you're like 300 pounds, it's not gonna apply, right? But if you're like in decent shape, like people like us, right? Let me actually explain it like this. Let's say if all you did was focus on your arms, right, and you for whatever reason you just wanted big arms, right, and you didn't pay attention, like that was your more focus, right? You still did the other workouts, but your arms were what you wanted to really focus on. So you lifted arms 2 to 3 times more in the week. That would be a form of spot reduction. Or yeah, basically spot reduction, right? Or spot emphasis, right? Your arms would actually grow at a very substantial rate. So why do people think that's not the case with other muscles? If you just focus on your legs will just grow. If you focus on your chest, your back. So why would it grow? And even with your abs. Now, if you're 300 pounds, obviously this won't apply, but you still have a strong core, right? Start also. This is actually another thing interesting. Studies have actually shown that if you have a strong core, that actually means you'll have a better gut health. There's actually a correlation between the two, right? Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that just because you have abs, right, you're going to have a 100% good gut health. But it does mean that you're more likely to have it. Again, there is a correlation between having a strong core, strong and having a strong gut health, which is very important when it comes to absorbing nutrients from food, right? And I've mentioned this before. So like when it comes to working out, this is my current split right now. Again, you don't have to follow it exactly, but if you want the most optimal gains, okay, you should be lifting minimum 3 times a day. I mean 3 times a week. And I personally lift 4 times a week. And on the days you aren't lifting, you have to do active recovery. Because active recovery is the best form of recovery. So you can actually, believe it or not, again, there are studies showing that the muscles in your forearms, your abs, your neck, your traps, and your calves, right, are a different muscle fiber type. So you can actually work out these muscles specifically almost every day if you wanted to. I don't do it personally every day, but I do it on my actual recovery days that I don't lift. So just to give you an idea, 4 days, this is what my split looks like. Um, so leg day is the first day. Right now, I kind of switched it. So squats, yeah, pretty much quad leg day. That's my emphasis. Next day is arms. And next day after that is hamstrings. So like it's another leg day. And then upper body. So chest and back. Right. That's my personal lift. You can have it like that, or you can have it slightly different. But in between those days, when I take a rest day, I still do active recovery. So with active recovery, what I'll do is basically I'll first thing I do is work on my neck. It's actually very easy to work out your neck. Believe it or not, it's actually one of the most. This is an interesting thing. Again, studies have found that the closer a muscle is to your brain, the easier it is to build up. This is maybe why it's like super easy to build. It's actually pretty fast. Like you build up a very good, big neck pretty fast if you just dedicate to it. And we know like building a muscle for your neck is very strong because it's very good for grappling strength and for striking as well, right? Because it keeps your chin in place, right? So it will more than likely give you a stronger chin, right? Because now your head won't rattle as much, right? So it's actually very easy to build up your neck, right? Just look at Mike Tyson, right? Right? That's what we want, right? So, and for grappling too, look at all the wrestlers, right? Now, what I do personally, don't do the neck bridges because that's, terrible for you. I've had a post on this on at the Blue Life Official, explaining why that's bad. But when it comes to building neck muscles, right, what I do is, post weights I'll take, there's a strap you can buy, right? Again, I have this in my biohacking program for MMA, all equipment and stuff, right? And I'll literally work on my neck this way, and then I'll go the other way, right? You can also do it side to side. I just haven't gotten into that yet. But yeah, those two basic movements are very good. I do about, I used to do about 30, now I do 40, and three sets of forward and then backwards as well, right? So that's 6 sets in total, right? Yeah, 6 sets in total. And that's actually recovery days for the days that I don't work out. Or, yeah. Actually, I'll probably still train that day, but like I'll still, like specifically working out. Yeah, it's the days that I don't work out. And then I'll go downstairs, I'll hit some abs. It could be honestly any routine, depending on which ab you want to focus on. Lower abs is probably what most people actually really lacking in. And it's probably the most important when it comes to kicking, right? Because it's kind of linked to your hip flexors. So, you can do the Bruce Lee like dragonflies, right? Or leg lifts, right? I do about 12 sets of 12, I mean, 3 sets of 12 reps, right? Then I'll do planks, just regular, and I'll stay there for like about 30 seconds to a minute. And then, I'll go to the side plank, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, or a minute, right? And after that, I'll hit all forearms. So I'll do rice bucket. Again, I have the whole routine in my biohacking. I do it for about 10 minutes, and you'll feel the burn in the forearms, right? Another great thing about the forearm, this active recovery, is that it'll prevent injuries. So you're less likely to get injured, and you're constantly training, right? That's also another thing with injuries is that it will sideline you for a long time because now you have to recover. So we don't want to be injured, right? This is another side point. And that goes with lifting, that goes with MMA training. We don't want to get injured, right? Right. If we can avoid it as much as we can, let's do that. Just go for that, right? Right. But hopefully my routine kind of makes sense to you guys. What I'm like, basically, I have this more detail in my biohacking for MMA program, but basically, yeah, it's like the best like routine that I personally built for myself. You can tweak it a little bit here and there, right? There's no issue with it. You can instead of having an upper body, you can have chest and triceps, or back and biceps if you want to do that. The routine isn't really the biggest concern here. It's just being consistently dedicated to it, right? And same with the diet, right? I mean, I don't want to say like have a dog shit diet, but assuming it's healthy, it's just maybe different from what I do. But if it's healthy, like just eat that same amount, same food, same day, every day, right? And you'll notice that you'll get muscle, right? And again, I do have a caloric surplus calculator that's like very accurate, especially for people like us that do MMA. It takes into account how much you're training, right? Right. And I have linked it into my program, right? So I do recommend checking that out, right? Again, but I do want to make this clear. Caloric surplus is very basic advice. Like, of course, you need to eat more to get bigger, right? That's only like half true. You want to eat naturally whole foods, right? That are anabolic, that will build your muscle, right? Yeah. But the active recovery, I feel like, is the most important because a lot of us, especially guys like us, like we just don't like sitting around doing nothing. So I recommend really the active recovery. Right? You can also do a lot of forearm exercises that day. Right. Right. Yeah, I started recently adding more forearm exercises because I kind of stopped doing it for a little bit and then I injured myself on the wrist. But the crazy thing is when I was doing it consistently, the rice bucket stuff, believe it or not, this arm right here, I mean this hand right here, literally bent all the way backwards. One time when I was rolling, and obviously sprung right up, and nothing happened. Right? Why? Because I consistently did the rice bucket stuff, and I didn't stop. But the moment I stopped doing it, the smallest thing with like weight, like I tweaked it, and then I injured myself from something so pathetic. So it's like, trust me, the active recovery stuff is very important. Like, now I can go into more detail about like specific muscles. Maybe comment down below if that's something that you want. Like arm maxing for anyway, leg maxing, ab maxing, right? If you want me to go into more specifics, I can do that, right? But I mean, hopefully this gives you a very good like general view of what you're supposed to do. So to kind of summarize everything, stay in an anabolic state, avoid being in a catabolic state, right? First thing in the morning, take your whey protein. After training, take your whey protein with raw milk. And then third, at night. You can also add like an optional bone broth protein or beef isolate protein if you want. And then lastly, at night, casein protein. Yeah, casein protein powder at night. Right. Because again, you want to be in an anabolic state even when you're sleeping. Right. Just be in this constant anabolic state in your draw muscle. Right. And take vitamin D from the sun. Right. Get that. Right. And all the mineral stuff that I mentioned before. Like all the mineral stuff that I mentioned before. Take that stuff. Right. Take that stuff. And with your workout routine, I'm just summarizing basically everything I said. Right. So and with your workout routine, right, minimum 3 times a week. If you can do 4, even 5 days, that's honestly really good. Right. Just you know, like experiment with how much you can do with your given MMA routine because you also be training MMA, right? It's not like you're just lifting, right? See what you can do, right? So let's say for a person that's training multiple times in a day, maybe it's not bad to honestly dedicate some time to lifting weights. Like, but yeah, the technique is important, but so is getting strong. So is getting strong and being able to manhandle people, right? Being explosive, right? And all these other stuff, right? Building muscle is very important, right? You're less likely to get injured too if you build muscle. It's also another great thing. So, even dedicate some time. Instead of training 3 times a week for everything, maybe train 2 times and have like a lifting session in there, right? However your schedule is, like, right? Again, I can help you with that. If you join the BioHacking for MMA program, link right below, right? And if you need like more guidance and specific like stuff, I can help you with that as well. Right? If you join the program, but the point is, you know, I can give you all this great advice, and I've given you amazing advice, but you got to be consistent with it. And like, again, we will probably fall off a little bit here and there, but always come back to it. Always come back to a good routine, right? Same workouts, same amount of food, same day, every day, right? Have a really good routine. That is what will help you build muscle more than anything, right? More than anything, that is what will help you build the muscle. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, like everything I've mentioned has made sense, right? But yeah, I mean, I pretty much hit everything that I can think of, right? Again, any specific questions you can ask it down in the comments below if you want, right? Because I know building muscle for me kind of counterintuitive because of how catabolic the sport can be, especially with training consistently. But we can bypass that by always being in an anabolic state, right? By always bettering ourselves, right? And again, like I said, if you want more detailed help, you can join the biohacking MMA program. The link is below, right? Get my direct help, right? And with like hundreds of thousands of like specific stuff of what you can do, right? All detailed program, link in bio, right? And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so I can keep making these videos, right? Like this video, right? Share with your friends that train as well. But until next time, man. Until greatness returns, I shall leave you in the echoes of excellence.